This podcast is brought to you by MHA of Dutchess County and produced by CMJW Entertainment. This episode of The Vital Women of Washington Heights is proudly sponsored by Levia Med Spa.
You're listening to The Vital Women of Washington Heights.
Hello, everyone. My name is Iris Douglas, and my co-host here is Yvette O'Sullivan. And here's our producer today is Connor Walsh.
Hello, I'm in front of the camera today.
As Connor's going to introduce our special guest, but we welcome you back to the Vital Women of Washington Heights living in Dutchess County.
So today is going to be such a great episode. With us today, we have an incredible writer and director. His film, Mad Bills to Pay, has been just going all over the film festival circuit, and we're going to be talking about the release, what it means, and how it's going to impact the community at large. So with us today, we have Joel Alfonso Vargas. Joel, how are you, my man? You're out in the UK right now, right?
Yes, yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Really honored to be having this conversation with you guys. Yes, I am in the UK, in London. I've been living here I'm originally from New York, from the Bronx, but I've been living here for since the last 4 or 5 years.
Jeez. Well, hey, thank you for dealing with the time difference with us right now. Yeah. And of course, I'm going to hand it over to Yvette right now for her bochinche before we get into talking about your film.
Sure. Well, today's bochinche is that I know him as Joey. Joey and I are related. Joey's grandfather is my mother's brother. Therefore, Joey's grandfather is my uncle, and my mother and his grandfather are the only 2 living siblings out of 9. And recently they had the opportunity to spend some time together because they're both in their 80s. And I knew Joey when he was 5 years old, and I haven't seen Joey since then, until he had his premiere of Mad Bills to Pay. And I don't think he remembered that at some point in his life, we had the opportunity to meet. And now it is such a joy to know him as an adult. And welcome to our show, The Vital Women of Washington Heights.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. How excited are you to introduce Joey?
I'm very excited. This is a very proud moment for our family. And I know from spending time with his grandfather, my uncle this past summer, that he is extremely proud of his grandson. And in the Dominican community, they always have, no diga nada, pero él es mi favorito, which is something that they say, which is something that they always say about, their children, their grandchildren. And in English, what that means is, don't say anything, but he's always my favorite. But they say that about all of us.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. My mom's always like, oh, it's just the same. I'm like, okay.
Do you think he saw something special in Joey when he was a little boy?
I'm sure he did. Joey was an extremely special young man growing up, and so special that he excelled in the public school system to the point that his teachers and also the principal, I know from stories that your mother has been able to share with me, recommended you to go to specialized schools. And from there, I believe that's where you started to explore the film industry.
Yeah, it wasn't really so much a specialized school. It was an alternative school, actually, but because I wasn't doing so well initially in high school in the Bronx, and I transferred to high school in Manhattan. But it turned out that school, it was the process of getting into it was super rigorous. You had to interview and do a logic exam and all this stuff. But it was a Montessori school, really. It was modeled after a Montessori school. And so I went from a context that the classrooms were 40 people in a classroom to suddenly being with 13, 14 kids, and you get a lot of individualized attention. And because of how it was structured and the curriculum, there was a lot of arts programs. So I did playwriting, I did photography, and eventually I learned about filmmaking, and that's really how. But yeah, I always kind of had I was always drawn to I think I always wanted to be a good student, but there was a phase, when I was maybe around or closer to Rico's age, who's the protagonist in Mad Bills. I had a bit of a rebellious moment, and I was hanging out with the wrong people and all that. And but yeah, kind of turned it around really fast. And yeah, I got out of that. I got a scholarship. I was able to go to college in Pennsylvania, and there I initially went for engineering, but I quickly realized that it wasn't for me, and I studied filmmaking, and one thing led to another, and that's how I'm here, I guess.
I think as adolescent, we've always experienced a moment where we rebel, and I think it's very normal. What is very commendable is if we're able to pull out of that stage and then find ourselves and become productive members of society. and not fall into the traps that sometimes are there, for maybe an underserved population or from a neighborhood. Because Iris and I, we both come from Washington Heights, and they were some of our friends that didn't have the opportunity to get out of the neighborhood. And then there were others that had the opportunity of getting out, like Iris and I did.
Yeah, of
But
course. Yeah.
I think that Joel also had the opportunity that your family was like on it, like, let's see how we can help Joel be better. And that's what's up, because that's how you got to, we're making a movie and you mad bills to pay. It's like everyone can resonate like that, in the
Yeah,
Bronx and in Washington Heights. So me personally, I don't know you, but I know your cousin here. I love her, and I'm so proud of you, because that's a big accomplishment, Dominicano from the Bronx,
yeah,
with
represent.
film. Yeah, so
100%.
exactly. That, you know what's up. So I'm honored. I'm honored to be here.
So,
Thank you.
Joel, got a few questions about the film, of course. So,
Yeah, sure.
you were mentioning around Rico's age, you found yourself in this rebellious period. Iris and I have yet to see the film. Only Yvette has out of this group, and we're all very excited. With that comparison of what you were saying in ages, would you consider that Rico or anybody else in the film is a self-insert, or is it a conglomeration of people or inspirations you've had in your life?
Yeah, I mean, there are some personal elements, of course, because I'm also the writer of the film. But really, the inspirations, they were like familial, in the sense that I have a brother whose paternal brother was 12 years older than me, who was a teen dad at 17. My own mother was a teen mom, not with, she was a teenager when she had my older brother, who's about a decade older than me. So, I was thinking about their stories really when I was, I can't really tell you which came first. Was it, the story or kind of like the memory of them? But it all happened around the pandemic. And I just remember just thinking a lot about that experience. And maybe it was because I was kind of then in my late 20s. I'm in my 30s now. But I was maybe the thought of parenthood and fatherhood and all this stuff, like maybe was beginning to enter my mind. And I was just thinking, but I guess thinking a lot about their experiences and how hard it must have been for them to just navigate it all as young people. Those are big choices to make. And, in their case, I don't know if I wouldn't be able to say, like, I don't think they were choices really, it was probably accidents that led to some choices, but yeah, it just all seemed really, really complicated. And I wanted to explore that through the vehicle of a film.
I want to share, and this is very personal. I know that when your mother had Kelvin, she was 16, and so was I, because we're only 3 months apart.
Oh, really?
We're only 3 months apart, because I don't know, back then I have a load of cousins that they're all same month, 3 months apart, 6 months apart. So I don't know what was happening during that time. But for me, watching your mother's experience from the outside, that was, first of all, we used to spend a lot of time together. So I went through a grieving process that I was not able to have the same kind of relationship that I had with her as a 16-year-old, and a birth control as well.
Yeah, sure.
It scared the heck out of me that here was somebody the same age as me, and now they had to deal with a baby, and her whole life was shift around the responsibilities. And at the same time that she was pregnant, one of my best friends also was pregnant, and she was 16 as well. So I had to wrap my head around this. And I'm like, I am mourning the loss of two people that are very close to my life. And it was very scary to see what they were going through. So thank you so much for putting all that information together and coming up with a film to showcase the struggles that young people go through, or teenagers, when they're not ready to become parents.
Absolutely.
I definitely appreciate the film, because I had a 16-year-old cousin male who was a father at 16, and his girlfriend was 14. And I saw where he had to kind of struggle and work at a discount store and work at the supermarket and do this and do that to hustle it up just to get milk, bread, whatever, So I definitely, I'm waiting. I'm excited about the film, because it's gonna be relatable. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's gonna be relatable a lot of other people too, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. So we've been tiptoeing around it when we've been talking about elements of the film. But Joel, could you give us a little bit of an overview? No spoilers, of course, but an overview synopsis of what exactly Mad Bills to Pay is about.
Yeah, I mean, so it's basically the story of a teenage couple navigating a teen pregnancy. It's a very simple story premise, but it's he's 19, she's a little bit younger than him, so it's kind of that's already one big problem that they have to overcome. But she's kicked out of her house and forced to move in with him, and basically, the sort of apartment becomes a stage for kind of like their, you could say, kind of dysfunctional romance, as you would expect it to be for a couple this age. And that's all like happening against the backdrop of summer in the Bronx, and they sell these kind of cocktails that, if you're from New York, you're familiar with, called nutcrackers. Like that's, they do this kind of at Orchard Beach to get by, basically. And you're just basically seeing this kind of story, this window into this very, I would say, pivotal moment in these young people's lives unfold, and that's basically it.
That is really
without going too into, like, I don't want to give spoilers or anything like this.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. But tell us about how your experience growing up in the Bronx influenced this, because when it comes to certain movies, like I'm a big fan of Nolan's Batman trilogy. Gotham is very much a character as much as it is a setting. Would you say that you treated the Bronx the same way with this film?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It is a character, and in a way it was intended as like a love letter to the Bronx and where I grew up. It's kind of ironic now because I don't live in the Bronx anymore. But like,
almost a farewell then.
It's like that adage, yeah, maybe, but it's like, you can't take the kid out you can take the kid out the Bronx, but you can't take the Bronx out the kid. Like, the Bronx is always with me, and it's like part of my DNA. Like, I'm such a big fan of like, so many kind of things that have their origin in the Bronx, like hip hop and like graffiti culture, all that, it's like that, and Dominican culture really are what make up my identity. So yeah, like, I know in a lot of the stories that I tell, they have, at least the last 3 films I've made, they've had their setting or they were set in like either Uptown, Washington Heights, or the Bronx. It's all kind of like the same kind of DNA, you could say. So yeah, super significant. And for me, it's like not only just a love letter, but it's like a record, because things are changing so rapidly in New York. So many neighborhoods are being gentrified. There is a cost of living crisis, where just affordability is just inaccessible for a lot of people. And so who knows if in I don't know, 10 years time, like it'll exist in the same way. But so it's like this kind of time capsule, you could say, as well.
Yeah, I like what you said about record too. I know what you're saying in the time capsule kind of way, but when I first pictured it, as you said, kind of like a vinyl record, how certain things always spin around. When it comes to New York City, obviously I don't live there, but I've seen a lot of the changes. Number of people who are currently there or have been around says like, this reminds me of the New York City of the 70s. This reminds me of this. So it's just interesting how certain things come back around cyclical at the same time as well. We'll see if people will learn from their past, if it will continue to grow, if it'll evolve, how things will look in, as you said, 10 years, 20 years, whatever that might be. Again, I'm not from New York City. I'm from upstate, but we'll go from there. I'll pass it off to people who actually have lived in the city for our follow-up questions.
Well, that was part of why I enjoyed your film so much, because where you shot specific scenes, I was like, I've been there. Oh, yes, as a teenager. So you're showing so much the beauty of the Bronx, Orchard Beach, and the lifestyle, and just the whole community, how people sometimes help each other and support each other, and also how some people could care less, whether you're riding the train or whether you fall on the street and they just keep walking by and don't stop, to see if they can help you. So I felt you capture a lot of the Bronx and New York City life, and that's what makes your movie so real.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and that was completely, the intention. I just wanted to really stay true to my experiences, like and memories of life in the Bronx. So like that part came easy. I think in one of the questions that you guys sent me, it was like, how did you capture this sort of like naturalism? It was just like that, I was trying to be as honest as possible. Like I truly made the film with no other audience in mind, but the audience from, where I grew up. Like, that it resonates so much. Yeah, that it resonates so much internationally. Like that's a different thing, but I think it goes to show just how when you are very honest and specific about an experience, that resonates, that people will connect to it,
It's relatable to a lot of people, definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm super excited because I lived in Throgs Neck in the Bronx.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay,
I'm
cool.
like 15 minutes away from Orchard Beach. So I'm super excited to see the film. Yeah. And I'm excited to find out what's next, like, what do you, like, what do you want to do next? You know?
Like it's been such a great journey this year. So many opportunities, kind of things that have manifested for years, and that are materializing and things. So the next step, of course, will be another film, just a follow up to this. Basically, just trying to find put together the financing, and you kind of have to go through the same journey with the next project, but the hope is that because this one has been as successful as it has been, that journey will get a little bit easier. So that's without go, I don't want to share too much because things are very much in the early stages, but there's a follow up to this film, hopefully 2027, 2028.
That's great. That's very exciting. Speaking about real and raw, one thing that I was able to identify with are some of the scenes with dysfunction.
Dysfunction, sorry.
Yes.
Say again? Yeah.
With the dysfunction in the family dynamics. And I find, my background is in social work. And not only is there dysfunction in Dominican families, but in other culture as well. Do you feel that what you're portraying in the movie, do people from other cultures resonate with the dysfunctional family?
I think you could say that every family is to a certain degree dysfunctional. I don't, it would be if it's like a perfectly functioning family. I think that's an ideal, doesn't exist. People have clashes, like there are clashes between siblings, or clashes between parents. It's which is natural because you have like, I don't know, however big a family is, 4 people, 5 people, 10 people living under one roof. Like inevitably, there's going to be conflict. So I think people do resonate with that on internationally. What I found though is that like in I guess Latin derived cultures, like like people from in Europe, like for example Southern Europe, like Italy and like Portugal and Spain, like they kind of connect because I feel like we like the communication is just a bit like spicier. And I think Dominicans obviously are derived from that culture as well.
Fireworks.
Yeah, fireworks. Yeah, exactly. But I think people also connect to the film, on a thematic level as well, because you have, we live in a world where the economic disparities are they keep growing and growing. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. There's a lot of divide there, and there are many places in the world there are families that look like Rico's family. Maybe there are teen fathers and so on. Families that are really like struggling to survive in very expensive kind of hyper modern cities.
Well, the fact that you bring that up, I want to talk about Rico's character and the hustle that he has in the film, and it can kind of be looked down upon. I know that there are some illegal facets to it. So what kind of commentary were you looking to portray in what Rico has to do just to make ends meet?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going back to what I was saying earlier about kind of a cost of living crisis, and a lot of these big cities, London is one of them for sure. People have to resort to alternative means of sort of, of making an income. And I think that, there is the gig economy, right, where you do have, like these sort of tech jobs where people are doing, maybe, Uber Eats or whatever it is. But then you have kind of like the informal or DoorDash. Yeah.
Yep, I've done that.
Yeah. People have to do what they have to do to survive, to supplement their incomes. But you also have the informal economy, which is just like completely outside of that, which is, it's a spectrum. You have, like, for example, I have an aunt from my dad's side who, like, she lives in Manhattan, and basically she her gig is she makes soaps at home, face soaps, and she sells these soaps on the corner. Now she has like an Etsy store, and she's like, but it's like these kinds of, and that's the very innocuous end of that spectrum. And then you have the more extreme end, which is like, the more problematic stuff. Maybe you're drug dealing, maybe you're doing, some, all as a means to survive. And of course, like Rico's hustle exists within that spectrum. That's kind of on the one hand. On the other hand, yeah, like it's also, Rico comes from a community that has been alienated, like in the sense of like access has been kind of a bit harder to come by, and underserved, whether that's like through education or, maybe there are language barriers, like things that, perhaps lead one to being underqualified for a good job, and as a result of that, then, the informal economy becomes your only option. And I don't think that's exclusive to like the Dominican community or any community. I think every immigrant group has kind of gone through that sort of road. You think about the Irish immigrants, think about like Gangs of New York, film like that. It's just like people have had their, and eventually through the generations, people assimilate and kind of and so on. So it's really that's the story of America. I think with Latino populations, it's just we're a bit younger here, and that this is what we're going through now. But it's not things that are completely alien and removed to what others have gone through. I think with people of color, it's a little bit more complicated though, because I think assimilation is a lot harder to kind of integrate into, to gain access and to integrate into kind of mainstream jobs and so on. And I think that as a result of that, it could be that you're 3 generations in, 4 generations in, and you're still, the informal economy is still your only option. And that's the harsh reality, and
It's difficult and it's bad. As you
yeah,
said, we're getting poorer, and like that's putting people into these holes, and it's heartbreaking. But I'm glad that you're being able to tell these stories. I know I've been jumping in a lot. Which anything else, you guys?
I just want to say that I'm happy. I mean,
Yeah.
the more you kind of share your experience on why you created this movie, I'm really happy, because people need to know, the struggle is real, but you can also get out of it. You can also get out of it, and you got to figure it out how to get out of it. So I'm
Yeah.
happy, you're young, you're Latino, and this
Yeah.
is a big accomplishment.
Well, it's a
you.
powerful message.
Yeah.
But on a
Yeah.
lighter note, can you tell us how did you go through selecting your actors? And being someone that saw the film, the actors, of course, are not the age that they are portraying. But I thought that they did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
And I know from the interview that some of the actors, and I forget who exactly, acted for the first time. And I was surprised to hear that, because I was like, wow, I thought that they were a professional, actor. So tell us more about your process and your selection, and
Yeah.
basically how all of this is done, because I don't understand it, and I would like to know how it all works.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks for the question. I think authenticity was kind of like my I guess key idea with this whole thing. I wanted to keep it as true to life as possible, and I knew that in order to make a film that felt authentic, that felt raw, that felt real, I had to kind of cast from within the community. I couldn't go to some kind of casting agency and kind of that just wouldn't have worked for the kind of film I wanted to make. So the process initially entailed just having to it's called street casting. So basically, we were just going out, to Orchard Beach, to Washington Square Park, like all over New York City, where young people kind of got together and we're approaching people like, hey, do you want to be in a movie? You want to be, like people who we thought were interesting. And then we'd get submissions, basically self-tapes submitted through Instagram or whatever it is. And then that's how we began to kind of narrow our pool. And then eventually we started to chemistry test people. So that's just basically seeing how people work together, as a family unit, for example, at a facility in Midtown, and yeah, little by little, and this all occurred in the course of a 4-week period. But we found our family. In the end, it wasn't fully street cast. The mother, for example, who's played by Johanna Florentino, she was someone who was in my orbit. She's a theater actress. She does some screen work as well. But we've always wanted to work together. Nathaly came through a more traditional avenue as well. Juan, has a bit of experience.
Can you tell us who Juan and Nathaly?
Yeah. Sorry. Nathaly Navarro plays the sister. Juan Collado plays Rico. So Juan also has come from a sort of a community theater background, done some screen acting. And Destiny Checho, who plays Destiny, the girlfriend. She's the one who's truly a non-actor. So we found her on TikTok. She was doing these lip sync. I don't know if you guys are familiar with these lip sync reels to scenes in popular movies. And it was not even her own voice. It's just she's only acting with her face, but it was so phenomenal that we were just okay, we have to see this girl.
And Destiny is not 16, and she was playing the role of a 16-year-old, and I thought she did a phenomenal job, because when she told me this is my first acting gig, I was surprised, because for her to truly show the feelings of what a 16-year-old can go through when she's going through a pregnancy, I was just I was like, what? Really?
Yeah. I think that was a beautiful thing. They all took a lot of ownership over their roles, and it was such a collaborative process. similarly, Juan he's like he's like in his 30s, you know, like, and he's playing a 19-year-old. You know, it's just somehow we were all able to channel the sort of inner teenager in us, and deliver a strong film. But yeah,
Cool. You mentioned the collaborative process with everything.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, when you guys were filming, you being the writer and director, what was it like to be able to craft these characters once you finally had the actors in place you're filming? Was there room for improv? Was there room for changing the script a little bit? And it's like, oh, I feel this way about this character. How did that look like by the time you actually got on set and started shooting?
100%. Like I kind of come from a documentary background, and I have like this real allergy to like things that feel like scripted and fake. Like, you know, this is not, I can appreciate it, but it's just not those are not the kinds of films I want to make. So for, like, out the gate, we knew that we were going to improvise, and that it was going to be, emulative, more of like a documentary process. So yeah, in the rehearsals, like we had a script, like it was semi-scripted, but in the rehearsals, I was like, no, we're going to break this. And, you know, with the cast, basically we just rewrote every scene, you know, in a way that felt more organic to them, or how they would say something or whatever it was. You know, I just wanted everything to feel super fluid. And yeah, that's, you know, what you see in the film.
How important was it for everyone to have like the same mindset and have the same energy for you?
Yeah. I mean, it's so important. I think as a director, that's kind of like what you're directing. Like you want everyone to just be in sync, like for there to be synergy and working toward the same goal, you know, and like you're like directing morale. I think that's really what it is, you know. So it's really like it's like it's a lot of leadership involved in that sense, you know, sometimes more so than like creativity. But you got to get, you know, a whole crew of people and a cast, or like in our case it was a 16-day shoot, but on bigger, you know, longer productions it could be months. It could be, you know, like if you're doing one of those like a really elaborate series like Game of Thrones, for example, you know, that's, you know, you're doing that for 9 months, you know. So, you know, you're going to have all these ups and downs, but you got to still instill in people, regardless of whatever, that, you know, they got to keep, there's a reason why you're doing this, and
Them in good spirits, right? Good spirits. Totally get it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what was the most challenging part about creating this film?
I think the balance of having a very limited amount of time and limited resources, like the reality of that, and then having to balance that with like my needs as a director, which is, you know, and my goals really, which are to like deliver a quality film, so to get quality performances and all that. Like, so like it was just always like a dance, you know. It never felt like there was enough time and enough like money and resources to do things. But I think in how the film is shot, which I know Iris and Connor, you haven't seen the film, but that you have, like, you know, it's single setups. So which means that there's only one angle ever, like on a scene. We're never cutting to like a close up or whatever it is, you know, it's just always one angle. And that allowed us to move through our schedule very quickly and give me a bit of freedom to try new things from take to take. And then I kind of, as a director, I kind of made this like promise to myself, or I had this agreement with myself, which was like never move on from a scene without you getting what you need, or like at least there being a nugget of something that you can use, because then otherwise you're just wasting everyone's time, you know. So it's like you kind of have to like, so you're fighting these two battles on consistently throughout a production. So that was the hardest thing for me. But there were also a lot of challenges involved in shooting in New York, and, you know, navigating. It was done very guerrilla, so, you know, in some places we had permits, in other places we didn't have permits. So it was like a lot of that, you know, indie filmmaking stuff.
Tell us the part. I know during your interview after premiering the film here in New York, you spoke about how I believe one of the equipments was carried in a backpack. Was it the camera or the speaker? And I was like, oh, that's very creative.
Yeah. I mean, we had like a real, you know, heavy duty like movie camera, you know, kind of top of the line equipment. But we really stripped it down to like just its bare essential. So it was like, because we just wanted to be as inconspicuous as possible. So like all the gear that, you know, you would normally put in front of a lens, like, you know, like we took off so that it could fundamentally just be like a box and a lens, and that's it. And then we had a battery running through a backpack with a cable, and that was the whole setup. So like we could just literally get away with murder with that. So we could shoot anywhere. No one would like, you know, like
modified.
Yeah. Super modified.
You tried to put it all together. That's so cool.
Yeah. So that
you have to figure it out, right? When you want something done, right?
Exactly, 100%. You know, so
I'm very curious to see this film just to begin with, but the more we're talking about it, I'm excited. You mentioned about how each scene is just shot from one view. I really find that interesting with your, as you said, you had a documentary background. I
Mm.
feel like that is a very voyeuristic way of approach to that, where
Yeah.
it's like we're really encroaching on these people's lives. I'm assuming besides just besides the challenges that you had when it comes to filming, time and resources, that must have been an artistic choice as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, it absolutely was an artistic choice in the sense that I was trying to avoid looking at a lot of like cinematic references. I didn't want the film to feel like your typical New York City film that, you know, I don't know, like if you're a fan of like the Safdie brothers, like Uncut Gems or whatever, you know, it's like these films are so like energetic and like um to the point that they're kind of like they're great films, but I'm just like that. And in all credit, like that is a New York City experience. But my experience in New York City was like growing up in the Bronx was kind of sleepy, was kind of slow in the summer, just hanging out on the stoops, you know. So I wanted to capture just like that kind of languidness of how life can feel in that part of New York. But in addition, like we were also, or I was looking at photography a lot as like a key kind of. So I wanted the film to feel really like a series of photographs in a sense, like you're looking through a photo album of this family's life. You could speak on this as well, but like, you know, the film feels like, you know, you're getting these snapshots of this sort of this family and
Well, for me, that
yeah.
when you said that there's a sequel, I'm excited
Yeah.
because the way that the film ended, I'm like, now what? I want more.
Yeah.
So it's very exciting that you will give us more. And the fact
Well, yeah.
that
It's not really a sequel, so sorry to
Oh.
clarify. Like, yeah. It's just, I mean, I hope to do that, you know, maybe in like 10 years time. You know? I was like, I would even call it like Destiny's Child, you know, like it would be like just to kind of keep it, you know, yeah.
Well, it's the type of storyline that, at
Yeah.
least for me, it left me wanting to know where Rico is at, because there's a particular scene that if I could get into his head and know what he was thinking at that moment,
Yeah.
so I want to know more. I want to know what Rico is going to do.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, in a way, I hear you, but in another way, like I think it's also the power of the film, because we don't want to resolve that story. I think that story is so complicated, and I think we've all seen it play out like very positively and very negatively. You know, I think as maybe people from that community, we have to think on it positively. Like I genuinely hope that their relationship works out. But I'm honestly, as a filmmaker, I'm more curious in how other people kind of like how they interpret that. I want people to come to their own understanding of what that story is. I don't want to like spoon feed them and
Well,
be like,
we'll speak privately, and I'll tell you
yeah,
how I think his life is going to unfold.
yeah. You would be able to tell me. I don't know.
Yes. So
Yeah.
tell us about the Spanish title. The Spanish title, I flipped my page. What is it? Dile que no soy malo. Destiny, dile que no soy malo. Why is not the same translation as to the English title? Why did you go with that particular title in Spanish?
I mean, it's a bilingual film, so I wanted people to like, at first impression, know that it is a bilingual film. It's, you know, English and Spanish. So that's like off the jump, like, and both titles, like Mad Bills to Pay is inspired by like a lyric, that's like a Biggie lyric, and dile que no soy malo, dile que no soy malo, not the Destiny part, but dile que no soy malo. That comes from I think like a Luis Vargas like bachata, and so you know, I'm kind of playing with kind of different song lyrics, but I think for me personally, there's like almost there is a deeper meaning, because growing up in a single parent household, like my mom, and I think many people can probably relate, but she always had an opinion about my dad. Let's leave it like that. And
most women that have experienced divorce, or maybe their relationship hasn't worked out with their partner, they have an opinion about that person.
Yeah. And so, like, you know, you kind of, for me, like growing up as a young man, I was like, oh yeah, you know, my dad is this and that, and you know, my mom was really the one who, you know, provided for us and kind of, you know, and you know, of course, you know, she wasn't perfect, and you know, like, how could you be as a single
We
parent?
love her no matter what.
Yeah.
In case she happens to see this, we love her.
Yeah. No, of course, like I love my mom more than anything, you know. But you know, in terms of like my dad, like I kind of always grew up with this like prejudice about him, and then, you know, the older you get, like, especially coming from like a place as like I'm an artist, you know, I'm always dealing in like nuance and gray areas, so like that, like you learn a person's context, and like you think about, or you learn from like other family members, like how he was raised, and all the things that he'd gone through. That doesn't excuse his behavior, absolutely not. But it just kind of it maybe makes you empathize a little bit more with that. Like I think like maybe if I were going through the same things, I'd be the same person. I don't know.
There's always two sides of a story.
What'd you say?
There's always two sides of a story.
Yeah.
There's his perspective, and then there's your mom's perspective.
Yeah. So destiny dile que no soy malo, or dile que no soy malo, means tell them I'm not a bad guy. So that's like, it's almost like Rico when you watch the film, you realize, oh yeah, that's Rico communicating to the audience through the title, just tell them I'm not a bad guy, and that's the idea. And I was so interested in thinking, the whole, you could say that what kicked off this whole journey in a way is trying to understand like a character, I guess, like my dad, he's a very complicated person, kind of not always the most likable person, like Rico is not, the whole film, you guys will know when you see it, but you're just like, you just want to really just,
you want to strangle him.
Yeah. Like kind of get it together, like make the right choice. But, at every turn, he's kind of not doing that. And yeah, that's basically.
I can definitely appreciate the fact, the single mom. I was also raised by a single mom, and my mom was always, tu papa, tu papa, tu papa. It was always like your father, your father. So yeah, I could definitely appreciate that. But I've learned throughout the years that you got to kind of have compassion for them, because they weren't mentally or physically or at the same level where you're at now. So I appreciate, I can't wait to see the film, and thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah,
so as we're getting towards the end of this interview, normally I'm behind the camera saying how many minutes we have left, but something that I'm very curious about, we haven't touched on yet. As we said in the very beginning, you were going around in the festival circuit. What kind of reactions have you been getting from people through that? And what about the whole festival experience have you been enjoying or not enjoying while showing this film?
Yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question, but we, just to try to answer as simply as possible, like it's the reaction we've shown the film like in every corner of the world. It feels like, we've been to Tokyo, we've been to South Korea, we've been in Europe, we've been in Latin America, we were in Brazil, we were, all over the States. So like truly blessed to have had that experience. Again, with a film that, our expectation was just like, we just wanted to make a film that like told the story and with only one audience in mind, so that again, that it resonates. It's like, whoa, that's awesome. But it's been so great just to show that film to different audiences and just to kind of get a sense of like what the cultural and like what resonates, like what's the cultural reaction, like like in South Korea, like there's a joke in the film where towards the end, Rico, he has this crazy idea that where he wants to name the baby Samsung, and then like, it's just, for me, it was just like a throwaway line that we kind of found like in like the improv. But in South Korea, it was like, it like tore the roof off the movie theater. Like people were so like, and then for the whole film before then, like they were just so serious as well. Like, I was like, did they like this film? I'm not sure, but like, and then at that film festival, we ended up winning like the grand prize. And so it was like really cool. But, when we showed it in Europe, when we've been showing it in Europe, like in Germany and Austria, like the reading is always like a little bit more political. People want to know more about like the I guess like the social political themes, behind it. And in the US is more like, I think the reactions we get is like people who especially are Latino, like feel very seen and like even when the opening credits, because it's, I don't know if you know who Tokisha is, she's a reggaeton artist from Dominican Republic, but like her music is the title music of the film, and when that comes on, people just like, like
they want to get up and dance. They want to get up and dance.
It's basically that. So that's so kind of beautiful. It's just so beautiful to see just how different audiences respond to it. For me personally, though, like to answer your question about like what maybe are the other drawbacks or downsides, like it's just been really tiring just having to do all that whole tour. Like I've been doing that for like 10 months, and staying in hotel rooms and all that. So like, that's kind of, I feel like I just need to chill out and focus on my health for a little while. But super blessed to do it. And definitely.
Well, I'm sure it's also been fun, because tell us a little bit about Pablo, your producer. He's a lot of fun.
Pablo,
to be. Yeah. So at least you have that fun side that you can enjoy when you guys are not out promoting the film.
Yeah. We've had, a lot of fun kind of like this, we've just I think our networks have just expanded so much in this year, and we've just met so many interesting people, like, you know, who we want to collaborate with, or just, you know, like genuinely just great people in the audience who are just like, oh, you know, can, you know, treat you to a drink or whatever it is, you know. And so, like, yeah, it's been really affirming for us, you know. I think that's the word I would use, this whole process, like, because you go through, like, when you're coming up, I guess, you're always so insecure, like, oh no, like, you know, maybe this is a pipe dream, maybe, like, you know, and then, like, to get to the other side, maybe slightly, because, you know, we're still at the beginning, you know, it feels like, oh shit, you know, we're not that crazy, like, we just got to keep going, you know. So
Keep going.
yeah.
Well, we probably have 1 minute left because I know normally you
Towards
give
the
a
end.
5-minute warning. So
Towards the end.
would you like to leave the audience with some conclusion or action?
Yeah, maybe, like, I could, like, my call to action would be, the film is going to be out in the tri-state area in the spring. Can't yet disclose the date, but look out for it. Mad Bills to Pay, or Destiny, Dile, Malo, in a cinema near you. Please come out, support the film. And if you want to, you know, get in touch or learn more about me, you know, I'm on social media or whatever, just reach out, and always up for a chat. So
Thank you so much, Joey, for taking the time to do this interview with us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joey. Really appreciate you. And
Thank you guys.
forward
Thanks for having me.
lots of other things that you're going to do, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by MHA of Dutchess County and produced by CMJW Entertainment. Thank you once again to this episode's sponsor, Levia Med Spa.